Hello and welcome to a Eurogamer Newscast special here today to discuss the Microsoft and Activision Blizzard acquisition news. My name is Tom Phillips. I'm Eurogamer's deputy editor, and joining me today is Chris Tapsell, Eurogamer's reviews editor.
Hello.
Yes. And Eurogamer's editor-in-chief, Martin Robinson. Say hello. Hello. Wow, what incredible piece of information that happened to spring onto the internet today just as I was about to eat my lunch. My lunch aside, we should definitely talk about all of this means for the gaming landscape, the people who work at Activision Blizzard and Microsoft, I suppose, and also what it means for games, those things too. I guess the first thing that everybody is asking is, why is Microsoft doing this? This is such an enormous amount of money. Why that amount? Why now? And why Activision? What do you guys think?
I have no. Like, to be honest, it's been incredibly hard to pass exactly what's gone on, basically, because I had absolutely no inkling of this happening. I think you always hear murmurings of these kind of things, and there's you at least get some kind of heads up or anything. But it is just completely from left field, and so it's been really hard to know what to think of it, because there's obviously so much to it, which we'll go through, I'm sure, in due course. And there's a lot of complicated feelings around it, and so it's kind of hard to think, like, for me to have a clear cut thing on why Microsoft's doing this, because I've got a lot of questions. I don't understand a lot of it, of why they are doing it, given some of the news around Activision in over the last year and everything. It's difficult to pass that with being excited about, oh my god, Call of Duty and Activision, and then Blizzard games being on Xbox and everything. It's difficult to separate those two things. But obviously, Microsoft, in doing this, have just got the keys to some of the world's biggest gaming franchises, which I'm sure was a very good reason why to get that on Game Pass and to have that as part of the Microsoft family. That's a good place to start, I guess. That's why they might have done it.
Yeah, they also have King, which nobody's really talked about much, which is just, one of the biggest mobile publishers in the world. Would allow them to put things like Halo on mobile, would allow them to push Activision into stuff like, why isn't there a World of Warcraft for mobile that works really well and is really well monetized, that kind of thing.
It was, yeah, in the call afterwards, in the investor call afterwards, it was actually kind of, I think that's the one thing that stood out. I think it was more emphasis was placed on the King part of it by Phil Spencer when he spoke than kind of elsewhere, because of obviously Microsoft doesn't have much of a presence on mobile. There's kind of been half-hearted efforts in the past, and so this is an absolutely huge play for that mobile space as well.
Yeah. Microsoft also has Game Pass and it has cloud, and obviously all of the Activision franchises can now come onto Game Pass. Call of Duty, their day one on Game Pass, would sell a lot of Game Pass subscriptions, and when it is looking to the future, all it's talking about is cloud gaming and getting games onto more and more devices, tablets, phones. When you look at some of the franchises that Activision has, like, why hasn't like World of Warcraft been put on a phone? Why hasn't Call of Duty, Warzone been put on a phone? I can see them wanting to put the full fat versions of games rather than a mobile clone on there using the Game Pass or xCloud technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like Game Pass is more central to what Xbox, and by virtue of that, Microsoft is doing in gaming than necessarily people realize. Even though a lot of emphasis is put on Game Pass, it's talked about a lot. It really seems like it's kind of the future of that entire platform. I mean, there are already people talking about, or maybe, there isn't even another console for Microsoft, although people have been saying that for decades now, of the next console won't even be a console. But I think we're edging closer to that point. We have things like 5G that are right on the horizon. Microsoft have been talking about that for a long time. They've openly talked about user acquisition being a huge part of what they're after. I think it's something over 4 million players is what their target is. There are lots of Microsoft branded graphics doing the rounds on Twitter from analysts now that are kind of emphasizing this point. The whole business of Game Pass, its road to profitability, although people say it's profitable already, is through scale. They need gigantic numbers for it to be really worthwhile. And they need gigantic numbers for these kinds of acquisitions to be worthwhile. You think about it being almost 10 times the size of the money that they spent on Bethesda. And Bethesda was like the second largest ever, and we were all kind of losing our minds just processing that. It's extraordinary money.
Just last week we had Zynga being bought, and everyone was saying, Take-Two overpaid for Zynga because it was, what was it, like 15 million or something, and 15 billion, I should say. And here we have something that's almost $70 billion. It's incredible, but you get, when you look at that, Call of Duty and World of Warcraft, which, say what you will about their success waxing and waning, they are still two of the best known franchises in video games history. You get all of the rest of Blizzard, you get all of the rest of Call of Duty and Activision, one and the same. You get King, and they haven't underpaid for all of this. They are giving Activision a lot of money for all of this stuff. So you can't even say that they're getting it on the cheap after the various news stories about Activision in the past year.
Yeah, that's an important point to make, and it's something I didn't have to have pointed out to me, because obviously it's easy to look at this, and given the how Activision have very publicly kind of gone through a lot of trials and tribulations, and their share price has suffered massively as a result. And the assumption I made when I first saw this is like, this is just they're getting Activision Blizzard on the cheap, but that's not the case at all. They're paying over the odds for it.
Yeah, this is a good price for Activision, even long before all of the terrible allegations and reports and everything from the past couple of years. When you look at what happened with Blizzard first and then Activision more recently, and all of the stuff about what Bobby Kotick allegedly knew or didn't know. Talking about Activision, why do you think now, it kind of answers itself, why now for this takeover? Why have they agreed to it now, do you think, Taps?
Well, because it's lots of money. I think it's
Are you saying Bobby Kotick likes lots of money?
I think it's lots of money. I think it's a perfect opportunity to bow out, shall we say, for certain people to depart, maybe under better circumstances than if they stayed there and stayed independent of Microsoft and received a lot of pressure with him being right at the top of the company, other than the board. I think. Of course, it makes perfect sense where you can sort of cash out and go, okay, well then I'll take that clause in my contract that allows me to leave with a great deal of money after a really great deal of money after all of this, and especially again at that share price, which is a boring thing to talk about, but the price is what it was before the allegations started, if I have that right, which is it's dropped significantly since then. So it's remarkable. I think that makes a huge amount of sense.
So Bobby Kotick, obviously hugely controversial, widely disliked amongst employees, and a very controversial figure in the industry in general. He, for now, is staying in place. What we know is that he will be in position to help with the transition through 2023 when the acquisition is finalized. And we also know that nothing internal at Activision Blizzard will change until then. But beyond then, well, you can infer one thing, you can infer another, but what we only know for certain is that everything will report into Phil Spencer after the acquisition goes through. And, that would be a very good time, I think, for Bobby Kotick to bow out. Don't you agree, Martin?
Yeah. It would be good, and I think that's what makes this particularly hard to swallow. I think a lot of this news is because of Bobby Kotick stands to do exceptionally well out of this, basically, and given the stories surrounding Activision Blizzard and the culture that happened and was allowed to happen under his watch, and seemingly in some cases it appeared with his knowledge. You'd kind of hope there'd be some consequences for that, and there'd be some justice for that, and there would be an outcome in which you could see him being held accountable for the actions and for what he allowed to happen to his employees and the horrible things that happened under his watch. you'd like to think that after that, he'd be held responsible for it and not given a big ass paycheck and walking off into the sunset with a fatter wallet than he had already. I know it's really easy to oversimplify these things, and we do make Robbie Kotick the boogeyman and everything centers on him. But regardless, this is not a satisfactory outcome, I don't think, in regards to him and his position. At least what it looks like now. Obviously, we're making a lot of assumptions, and a lot of it's implied and isn't exactly explicit right now. But the kind of just looking at it and looking at what's been presented to us, it doesn't feel right, basically.
He will leave with a lot of money. Well, it looks like if he does leave, the paperwork is out there for how much he will earn if he does leave the company under good terms. And I think if you're Bobby Kotick, you would want to leave the company on good terms, and now would be a very good time to do so after completing the transition period. People, when they sell companies, stick around to sort of see out the transition and then very commonly leave afterwards. And I think that for a while, this sort of interim period could continue as the transition is worked out. We've got about a year. The deadline is June 2023. But after that, I think that Microsoft would get too many questions. You can say that a company is going to change, but when you have someone as perceived to be rotten as Bobby Kotick is at the head of the company, then how much can that company ever change? So I know what you're saying, Martin, about it being a disappointment that this is potentially how he's going to leave the company. But the long term of it, in my opinion, is that Activision Blizzard will be better off because of this deal. Not just for the employees, but the studios as well. You've got to think that Microsoft won't buy Activision Blizzard and then just have 12 studios churning out Call of Duty games and being miserable. And you would hope that Microsoft has a positive influence.
Yeah, well, you'd have hoped so as well. And obviously, and the talent they inherit is incredible. Those studios are all absolutely fantastic. All those ones sometimes people might question some of the output and some of the decisions made on certain levels, but I don't think you can ever question the talent that's within those studios there. And so it's going to be fascinating to see how Microsoft is going to apply that. So it's great. And obviously there is hope as well that they can foster a better culture. But obviously Microsoft, by its own admission, has not got a perfect track record, and so can't. And so has its own faults. And I know there has been a kind of they're pushing for a review of their own kind of standards in that regard as well. And that was announced just before this. And I think it's going to expand that project to kind of take an Activision Blizzard as well. So it's something they are going to be quite publicly addressing as well. And so I'm sure, hopefully there's some kind of hope for the Activision workers and everything as well. But I was like, maybe Activision were using GDocs though, and now they've got to use Microsoft Office Suite as well. And it is positive, but also, I mean, apologies if they're having to move to Outlook from Gmail and that kind of thing.
I have to be sort of atting Bobby Kotick on Microsoft Teams instead of Slack now.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I suspect not getting a reply on there either. I find it hard to imagine what it's like inside the head of a ActiBliz employee right now. I just imagine there are so many mixed feelings about it. Probably, like you say, hope / relief, and probably some cynicism or some trepidation about it. Probably some frustration or anger at the fact that there is a broad consensus that it is in some way Kotick and others getting away with it. I sympathise.
We can say that much. Like we know what we know for certain is that Bobby Kotick isn't leaving Activision Blizzard today, and that is a shame. And for a lot of people, that will mean that when he does leave, the most likely outcome is that he will not be leaving under a dark cloud, but under a huge win for shareholders, which he cares about so deeply, and without seemingly too much more scrutiny of his actions. I mean, it'd be interesting because what effect does this have on first the company, because I would hope that it would immediately have a positive impact. The feeling that you're not going to be working under Bobby Kotick forever, and that Microsoft, which does have stringent workplace condition stuff in place, that would improve things at the company. But also perhaps, yeah, as you were saying, Chris, a sort of feeling that, well, the line has sort of been drawn in the sand now and things will improve, but how much are we actually going to look back at the old guard as the old guard are leaving or have left? The other side to it, of course, is, as I mentioned, these studios, there's 10,000 people that are now going to be joining Xbox, and all of those people are hopefully going to be working on interesting things as part of it, more interesting things perhaps than they were doing when they had 12 studios working on Call of Duty and the rest on, I don't know, Overwatch skins over at Activision.
Crash Bandicoot remasters.
Well, Microsoft, with Game Pass, it has shown a tendency to sort of let small projects just kind of sprout and flourish. Like, look at Grounded at Obsidian, look at, what's another good example? Games that sort of wouldn't probably have found a home previously, but they can just afford to put on Game Pass. And
yeah, well, things like Back 4 Blood or sort of Team Ninja games and that sort of thing. There is that almost AA tier of game, the Ascent, things like that. I suppose these aren't all first-party things, but I know exactly what you're getting at. There's that sort of tier of game that I think is finding a new type of home there that can succeed very well on Game Pass, as we've seen in a few of them.
I would love to see some of those projects come through from Activision, Blizzard Studios. For example, High Moon is an Activision studio. It was actually previously helping on Destiny when Bungie was part of Activision. And then when Bungie left, they just got taken straight into the Call of Duty machine. Like, what are those guys doing now? They're just making Call of Duty guns. Get them on something that they want to do, that's interesting, that's new. Bring in new people. Use this opportunity to give people experience in the team where they've not necessarily had experience before. Put them on a smaller project.
I think you're optimistic. I think you're optimistic. I would really love that to be a case. More creativity, more new things is like what everyone wants out of the games industry. My concern is that you have a franchise like Call of Duty, which is, I'm sure a major part of the valuation of Activision alongside King in particular. And Call of Duty is big because it's annual and it releases like clockwork. Even the pandemic, it released like clockwork, even if it was a slightly lesser game in Vanguard. And Warzone is, still one of the biggest games, most talked about games. People who are not into games play Warzone, like they play football in the park, My concern is that they would not want to sacrifice that sort of golden goose by going, let's publish a Call of Duty game every 3 years or something like that. I mean, is there an in-between level maybe where Assassin's Creed is, where it's not quite every year, but there's more than one team working on it still that rotates, but not 12, it's 3 with a couple of support studios, that sort of thing. Maybe that's the future of it.
I do think especially when it's going to come to something like Call of Duty as well, it feels like now is a good time to maybe, obviously things are set in stone then, it's not as if anything's going to change because if it's going to be set on its own path for the next 4 or 5 years, so that you won't see anything overnight or even in the next 2 or 3 games or anything. But it does feel like a series that is in need of a kind of a fresh approach in some regards as well, so hopefully that will help. But also, so people want new things and everything, but also some of us just want DJ Hero 3, and that'll do the trick. So if that happens, then all's good.
Chris, as a Spyro and Crash fan, what is your opinion on today's news from that point of view?
To my shame, yeah. I think Crash was kind of up in the air, wasn't it? Because the studio that did, I've forgotten their name, it's not Beanox, but the studio that maybe
Toys for Bob.
Toys for Bob, that's it. They got put on Call of Duty duty, didn't they? Right after the latest Crash, and by most accounts, that was quite a good game, the new Crash game, and it was a genuine moment, as this weird British cult following that Crash Bandicoot has, actually getting a new one that is a fully fleshed out, like typical Crash game was kind of a massive moment in video games, and so it's weird to see that them get immediately sucked into the COD void, but. Maybe we'll see more of those. That'd be quite nice. A new CTR, so we can knock Mario Kart off its perch. This is why you invited me, isn't it? Just to stir things up, just to get Martin really annoyed about
new Crash Team Racing.
about Mario Kart.
Here's a question that we would discuss all the time on the newscast around the time of the Bethesda acquisition. Do you think Call of Duty now will be an Xbox exclusive?
Yes, but only as much as Xbox exclusive means anything, because it'll be on PC, and it'll be you'll be able to play it and cloud and everything, and you'll be able to play it across various devices. But yeah, of course, I think of course it will be. You don't, that all that money has not been paid to get Call of Duty out on PlayStation. So
the thing
it will happen. Maybe not for a while though, because I don't know. Obviously, these agreements in place. So it might not happen for another couple of iterations. But yeah,
they might have agreements like with sort of Deathloop, where there's marketing agreements in place for a certain number of years or something like that. But like Martin says, that the notion of an Xbox exclusive is just very different now. What that means is it's basically playable on literally anything with a screen and internet connection that isn't a PlayStation, or a Switch.
Well, you could probably play it on PlayStation. You could probably play it in the browser on PlayStation.
There probably somehow. I'm sure Digital Foundry will find some kind of back door to do that. But that like genuinely, it will be your phone, your tablet, your laptop, your desktop, your smart TV. That's happening any minute now, right? A streaming dongle, and your Xbox. The thing is that there's this weird thing with cloud technology that keeps coming up, where there's kind of a game of chicken between the sort of the people who are backing the business of cloud gaming and then the actual technology. And it's a question of, does technology get there first? So we have 5G everywhere, and you have Wi-Fi on planes that doesn't cost 50 quid or whatever, so you can actually cloud game when you're on the go, on a train where there's always terrible signal, which is where you do your gaming on the go. Or is it gaming that does that and puts a load of money into it, and therefore that causes the demand that the infrastructure catches up with? And I think we're still in this weird sort of standoff there, where the tech of like everyday life is just not at the level to be able to be doing that, and that will be, I suppose, the deciding factor in how successful this whole grand exclusivity plan is in a major scale, in terms of like playing COD, on or whatever you take out of your pocket when you're in the park or something. That's a big question mark.
Yeah, and when you look at Call of Duty anyway, Warzone arguably is now a far more interesting prospect long term than these singular annual releases. And I don't think there's none of us think that Warzone is suddenly going to be pulled from PlayStation. That's just not how Microsoft does business. Minecraft is still on PlayStation, and I'm sure that Warzone will continue.
Yeah, well, service games make sense to be on as many platforms as possible, because they're normally about people spending money over time, right? So they just need people playing the game up front. That's why so many of them are free to play. It's the one-off exclusives, the annual Call of Duties, the Bethesda games that everyone's talking about, the new stuff, that I cannot see a world where in at least maybe 2 years' time Call of Duty isn't exclusive to Xbox.
Yeah, I think so. For as long as those singular annual releases come about, I think we are in that kind of place that you were mentioning, Chris, where Ubisoft had that conversation: do we still want to put out an Assassin's Creed every year because the numbers are going down, or is it better to hold it back and do it every couple of years, similar to what EA does with Battlefield? So yeah, we'll see.
That's quite an exciting prospect as well, I would say, in terms of Call of Duty. I mean, mixed opinions about Call of Duty as a franchise, but for fans of that, you look at what's happened to Assassin's Creed, where it was in a little bit of a malaise around, I don't know, sort of like 4-ish Unity, that kind of period, and they stepped back to doing these big, gigantic, open world, everything bagel games. For all the weirdness of that type of game becoming a bit homogenous, they do make for enormously successful and popular games that are very good fun as like just a kind of switch my brain off open world collectathon thing. And you think about Call of Duty with that kind of budget behind it, and a 5-year run for each studio working on it instead of 2 or 3 years. It is interesting, because Call of Duty's been trying to do that for a long time, with like we'll put a little tiny hint of like Hitman in this game, or a stealth section, and it's never quite fleshed out. But it's fascinating to think that they might actually have a chance to do something interesting with that game again.
Would you buy an Xbox for a new Spyro?
I've already got an Xbox.
Would you buy another one though? Would you buy if it's a branded Spyro edition? And it's like
I think I
purple?
would. I'm much more of a. If there was like a CTR one and it came with like a racing wheel, or
And
some
it had
kind
jorts.
of like.
It came with it was wearing
Yeah,
jorts.
yeah,
And that's that'd be awesome.
I would buy Xbox jorts. But Crash, yeah.
Well, on that note, perhaps that is a good time to start wrapping things up. Thank you both for joining me and discussing what I think will be one of the biggest gaming news stories of the year. And I'm fascinated to see how it continues to evolve, whether we do hear more from Activision Blizzard, for better or worse, about what's happened in the past now, or whether we hear more about the future and, in particular, Mr. Kotick's future. Yeah. Thank you very much for being with us. And thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.